I do want to say good afternoon to everyone. I hope that you all had a wonderful weekend. I know some of those, depending on what area you're from, may have experienced some inclement weather. So I hope that everybody was able to be safe. But I do want to just welcome you to our webinar today, Student Loans, Be Smart About It. We're going to have an amazing time together. I do want to introduce our presenters that we have for today. Of course, I am your regional rep for the 336 telephone area code. My name is Tequila Barnes Hall. We also have Sean Henderson. He is the North Carolina State Education Assistance Authority Higher Education Program Manager. So we will be your presenters today. So just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Again, for those of you that may have just joined us, please mute yourself so that we can have a quality experience. We are also asking you to place your comments or your questions in the chat, and we will make sure that we're checking that information frequently so that we can respond to whatever your comments or questions may be. Here's some of the things that we're going to talk about today. So we want to talk about what is your financial personality, understanding student loans, what is your financial strategy, and also use your resources. So these are some of the items that we're going to touch on this afternoon. Now, before we get started, I want to do something really fun with you guys to kind of help you relax and get really into the topic that we're going to talk about today. So we're going to start off talking about what is your financial personality. So this is going to be an opportunity for you guys to participate. Remember, we do have the chat enabled, so you can put comments. So I want to find out, what kind of spender are you? So again, what kind of spender are you? So I have 5 quick questions that I'm going to ask you, and I want you to record your answers on a piece of paper, or you can put it on your tablet, or just however you want to do it on your cell phone. And then at the very end, I want you to tally up all of your answers. And then I'm going to put up the results screen so you'll know what kind of spender you are. Okay, so be honest. I know you will. So the first question I want to ask you is, when it comes to saving money, I know I ought to be saving, but I never seem to be able. B, I really enjoy saving. In fact, I spend a lot of time and energy thinking about how to save. C, I have trouble saving money, and this bothers me sometimes. D, I spend only for things I really need. And E, saving comes naturally to me. I save regularly. So I'm going to give you a second. So on your piece of paper, on your cell phone, your tablet, whatever, I want you to put whatever your answer is for question number 1. Okay, so a couple more seconds, and then I'm gonna move on to the next screen. And we're gonna go with question number 2. Question number 2, as far as credit cards are concerned, so again, as far as credit cards are concerned, so think about yourself when we're thinking about this particular item. A, I often forget to pay my credit card bills. I get a lot of warning notices because I haven't sent payments in on time. B, I don't mind charging lots of things if I know I can pay off my credit card bill quickly. But if I can't, I think about my credit card bill a lot. C, I tend to use credit cards often, but I always make the minimum payment. D, I prefer not to have a credit card at all. I use mine as little as possible. Or E, I always avoid using a credit card. I prefer paying by cash or check. So take a moment, put down whatever answer is for you. So I'm going to give you a couple more seconds here, and then we're going to go to question 3. Hope you guys are doing all right. All right, question number 3. When I want a certain item, but it costs more than I have. I'm going to repeat that again. When I want a certain item, but it costs more than I have. A, I'll buy it and figure out how to pay for it later. B, I save for it first, then I buy it. C, I'll buy it or charge it, even if I can't afford it. D, most of the things I want are not luxury items, so I can afford them. On occasion, when I do want something outrageous, I may buy it, but the purchase will make me feel very uncomfortable. E, if the item is important enough to me, I'll figure out how to adjust my budget to buy it. If it isn't that important, I'll forget all about it. So I'm going to give you a moment to record your answers. Now, you guys can see things in advance, so you see my answers, but I want to make sure that you put whatever your answer is. I'm going to give you another second or 2. We're almost done. I can't wait to find out what kind of spender you are. All right. Question number 4. When I'm feeling down in the dumps. So when I'm feeling down in the dumps, A, spending money does not cheer me up. B, hatching plans to make more money makes me feel better. C, spending more, excuse me, C, spending money always cheers me up. D, spending just makes me feel worse. Spending has nothing to do with happiness. Or E, is the last thing I would do, but putting more money in savings or solid investment might lift my spirits. So I'm going to give you a moment just to record your answers. All right, last question. I like this question. This is one of my favorite questions. If I, so I'm going to personalize it to me, if I, but you point at yourself, if I won $1 million in the lottery, my first reaction would be, I wish I could just, see all of you and just see what you think. If you won, I'm going to say you, if you won $1 million in the lottery, your first reaction would be A, to be totally overwhelmed. I would have no idea how to handle it. I wonder how many are choosing A. B, to be very happy. I would immediately start thinking about how to make the money grow and at the same time use it for my own enjoyment. C, to be wildly excited, realizing that from now on I can buy anything I wanted. D, I feel a little guilty thinking about all the people who have nothing. I would think about how to use some of my money to help others. Or E, to feel shocked, a little overwhelmed, and very relieved that my future was now secure. So record your answer. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to tally up your responses and see, are most of your answers A, B, C, D, or E? And we'll talk about what that means in just a moment. All right, I'm going to tell you what mine came up to be when I did it. So results are in. So most of my answers were A. So you are an avoider. You put off making money decisions. So that was the one that came up for me when I did it. But I want to see what came up for you. Now, if you feel comfortable after you tally up all your answers, so again, if most of your answers are A like mine, you're an avoider. If you chose mostly B answers, you are a collector. So that means you like to see your money make money. If you chose mostly C answers, you are a spender. You enjoy spending and think little about how to pay for your purchases. If most of your answers were D, you are a thinker. You care about others who have less than you do, and you often feel guilty about having more money than they do. If most of your answers were E, you are a miser. That's an old school word there. You like to save every penny. You do not enjoy spending. Now, if you're okay with it, put what you are in the chat. And let's see what we have. So if you feel comfortable enough, you can put your answer in the chat if you don't mind sharing it with us. All right. Now you can take your time and we'll talk about maybe what some of your answers are. So again, no pressure, but if you feel comfortable, you can put what kind of spender you are and we'll talk about it. Now, my colleague and I will be tag teaming. So Sean and I will kind of go back and forth in the presentation because we want to keep you entertained as we go through. We have so much information. I mean, we have a lot of stuff to talk about, and I want to make sure that we cover it all in the time that we have. So I'm going to turn it over to Sean, and he's going to talk to you about understanding college costs.
All right, thank you, Tequila. Can you hear me good? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. Well, first, we just want to take a little time to talk about cost of attendance. One thing we found with talking and working with students is that oftentimes they don't realize that when it comes to cost of attendance of attending school, that you have what's called direct cost and you have what's called indirect cost. The direct cost, tuition, any required fees associated with you attending school, then also room and meals, or meals is also referred to as board. But then there's also indirect cost. You have your books and supplies. If you're in class, you're going to need books, whether they're hard books or electronic books, you're going to need those, as well as any other supplies that are needed related to your education. Transportation, you may need to get back and forth to campus if you are a commuter, or to just get around town and go back and forth to work maybe. Then there's also personal and miscellaneous expenses for things such as toiletries, if you have a child care. And then also if you borrow student loans or borrow loans, there may be fees associated with those. So those are things that you just need to keep in mind, that there's direct cost as well as indirect cost. A lot of times students focus on maybe tuition, room and board, but they forget about those other incidentals that are associated with attending school. So we want to make sure we highlight that and point out the fact that there are two categories. You have your direct cost as well as your indirect cost. And believe it or not, your indirect cost can be just as important as your direct cost, because there could be situations where your direct cost expenses are paid, but if you're struggling to meet your indirect cost, that can make it difficult for you to attend school. So just kind of keep that in mind, that you need to not only focus on your direct expenses, but also those incidentals that are indirectly connected with you attending school. Next, please. That's a quote that I like. Anyone can apply for student loans, but creating a strategy for paying for school is the best way to make sure you are getting the most for your money. And that's not only true for school, that's true for any situation, but especially when you're dealing with finances, having a strategy. So if you don't take anything out of this quote, focus on the word strategy, because that's going to be very key to you not only being successful in regards to your finances for school, but just finances in life. And you'll find as we go through this information that we're talking about things that not only apply to school, but they also can apply to your personal finances as well. All right, this is just something to kind of make you think. When you think of student loans, how do you feel? What's your immediate reaction? Rating it from 1 to 5, 1 being the sad face in red, and 5 being the happy face in green. So just think about that for a moment. And if you want to share, feel free to put that in the chat. If not, just kind of internalize it and think about that as we talk about student loans. How do you feel about it? And then also try to think of some of the things that may be influencing those feelings that you have in regards to borrowing student loans. Have you looked at your individual situation to determine what you should borrow? That is key. You need to look at your individual personal situation to determine what you do and do not do when it comes to borrowing student loans. Try not to be influenced by your peers or your close friend because they're borrowing X number of dollars. You feel that you must do the same. Look at your own personal situation to make that determination for yourself. Here we go. What is your financial strategy for college? What is your financial strategy for college? One of the key pieces to attending college is being able to afford being there. So you need to focus on that and have a strategy as you prepare and as you go through your years of school. We wanted to talk about student loans as we indicated. Unfortunately, and it could be fortunately, student loans is a realistic piece when it comes to many students when they're looking to attend school. Unfortunately, if everyone could go to school for free or not have to borrow loans, that would be great. But realistically, borrowing loans is a big part of attending school for many students. So we wanted to take a minute to talk about the standard student loans, because there's two types. You have what's called direct subsidized, and then you have what's called direct unsubsidized. With the subsidized loan, it's need-based. And when we say need-based, your FAFSA, your free application for federal student aid, plays a part in the calculation to determine what your financial aid need is, that's actually calculated by the financial aid office. But your subsidized, or the subsidized version of the loan, I should say, it is a need-based loan. There's no interest that accrues or bills on the loan as long as you're enrolled at least half time. So as long as you're enrolled at least half time, which in most programs is 6 credit hours, you are not in a repayment status. And at the same time, with the subsidized loan, the U.S. Department of Education pays the interest while you're in school. With the subsidized loan, as well as the unsubsidized, it is student debt. This is a loan, or these are loans that would be in the student's name. There's no credit check required in regards to these particular loans. So it's pretty much guaranteed for a student. We don't like to use the word guarantee, but for the most part, it is when it comes to Stafford subsidized and unsubsidized loans for students. And there is a MPN, which stands for the Master Promissory Note. It's basically the official legal document where you are acknowledging that it's a loan, you're borrowing the money, and it must be repaid at the set date and time. Then the unsubsidized, it's not need-based. So when the FAFSA is done, the financial aid calculation is done by the financial aid office, they may say you don't have financial aid need. but you're still able to borrow Stafford loan. It's just going to be the unsubsidized version where you would be totally responsible for the interest. The U.S. Department of Education does not pay the interest while you're in school, or from day one, you are totally interest as the student borrower. Once again, it's the student loan. It's the student's loan, excuse me. There's no credit check involved, as well as the master promissory note is required. For dependent students, there's also what's called a Parent Plus loan. And this is basically where the parent is able to borrow funding on behalf of a dependent student. The student may be getting all the grants and scholarships, as well as borrowing all the loans that he or she is able to receive, but there could still be a shortfall in regards to what's needed to cover cost, whether it's direct cost or indirect cost. And with that being the case, the parent would then have the opportunity to borrow the Federal Parent Plus loan. With this particular loan, it is credit-based. So an official credit check is done on the parent that is applying to borrow the loan. It's not need-based, and the parent borrower is totally responsible for the interest from day one. And once again, the master promissory note of the MPN must be signed to actually borrow these particular funds. Now, for students who are in graduate or professional school, there's also a plus version of the loan as well. It's not need-based. The student must complete the FAFSA. And once again, it is for graduate professional students. It must be repaid just like the Stafford loans. And then also there is a master promissory note or MPN that is required in order to borrow those loans as well. You're going to see this throughout our presentation quite a bit. StudentAid.gov, excuse me, and that's because it's a key website in regards to financial aid in general, but especially in regards to the federal funds, whether it's loans, grants, and scholarships. There's just a wealth of knowledge and information here. But we wanted to point out here at this particular slide that you're able to log into your account. You must establish an account. You're able to log into your account, and this is where you would actually complete the master promissory note. And then also you would see other information regarding maybe your grant or loan history. If you've borrowed loans before, if you've received grants such as a federal Pell Grant along the way, you would be able to see your history here as well. But you must go through this particular site or your account at this particular location in order to complete the official master promissory note that's associated or tied to borrowing student loans. Or if it's the parent, the plus loan, excuse me. We just wanted to take a moment to point out the loan limits. What you see here for a dependent student in regards to the subsidized and the unsubsidized Stafford loans. Of course, it's based off your classifications. You can see in the far left-hand corner under grade level, where a first-year undergrad student, it is tied to earned credit hours. You're able to borrow up to $3,500 in a subsidized loan based on your financial aid need. And then there's also an additional $2,000 that can be borrowed in the unsubsidized loan for the total annual amount for the school year of being $5,500. And then you can see for the sophomore year, it's $4,500 subsidized and then $2,000 unsubsidized for a total of up to $6,500. Keep in mind, your subsidized amount is tied to you having financial need. So you may not necessarily be able to borrow the full subsidized amount that's here, but if you're not able to, you would be able to borrow it through the unsubsidized loan. At the end of the day, your annual limit would be the same, whether based on your classification. It's just a matter of how you're able to borrow the loan funds, whether it's subsidized or unsubsidized. And then with your junior and senior year, the amount increases where you can borrow up to $5,500 in a subsidized loan, and then up to $2,000 in an subsidized loan for an annual amount of up to $7,500. And then we have a notation here regarding the aggregate limit for undergraduate dependent students is $3,500, meaning that over your total undergraduate career, the maximum amount you can borrow in Stafford loans is $31,000. No more of that can be $23,000. So you can receive up to $23,000 in subsidized as long as you qualify for it, but you can only borrow up to $31,000 total and up to $23,000 as subsidized loan. And then here it's a similar chart where we're talking about, but we're looking at it from the standpoint of being an independent student or a dependent student who has a parent who's denied the federal plus loan that I mentioned a moment ago. With that being the case, your subsidized maximums remain the same. However, the unsubsidized amount, it's increased, as you can see. As a first year, second year student, if you are an independent student or if your parent is denied for the plus loan, your unsubsidized amount goes up by an additional $4,000. And then as a junior or senior, your unsubsidized maximum increases by an additional $5,000. And that's based on you being an independent student for financial aid purposes, which that's determined through various questions that are asked on the FAFSA. Or once again, if your parent is denied when they apply for the Federal Plus loan. And then as a graduate professional student, you're not able to borrow any subsidized funding. However, you're able to borrow unsubsidized funding, and the maximum per school year is up to $20,500 with an annual amount of $20,500. Once again, keep in mind, the amount you're able to borrow is going to be impacted by any other grants or scholarships you may be receiving, as well as the maximum amount of financial aid that you're permitted to receive for the school year, which we're going to touch on that later a little bit later, which is your cost of attendance. Private student loans. We kind of refer to these as last resort loans. You've received all of the grants and scholarships you're eligible to receive. You've borrowed your maximum Stafford loans. Maybe your parent applied for the PLUS loan and they were denied, so you're now receiving that additional unsubsidized loan, but there's still a shortfall in regards to how much you need to cover your cost of attendance. There are what's referred to as private loans, private education loans, or alternative loans. Maybe you've heard that, alternative loans. And with these particular loans, they are typically or generally through a private lender, maybe an institution such as a credit union or maybe a local bank, and they tend to be credit-based. What I've seen is majority of undergraduate students tend to need a cosigner, someone who is credit worthy in order to be able to borrow this particular loan. But like I said, we do kind of refer to these as last resort because we try to take you through all the avenues of which you're eligible to receive, whether it's on a federal, state, or institutional level, before looking at a private education loan to maybe cover any shortfall that may remain after those other avenues have been exhausted. And now I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Tequila. She's just going to talk briefly about the slide that's before you now.
Thank you, Sean. As Sean and I have alluded to before, we definitely want to make sure as we're talking about student loans, we want you to be smart about it. So we may have a variety of different individuals who are on the webinar. So we may have some individuals who have never taken out a loan, but you're thinking about it. We may have some of you who are already borrowing, but you want to find out how you can continue to borrow smart, or how can you best handle the loans you have. And then there may be some students who are individuals who have joined us who are thinking about, okay, I've finished my undergraduate work, but now I want to go to graduate school. And as I think about graduate school, how do I finance graduate school? How can I be smart about what I've already borrowed, and do I need to borrow, in the future? So just want you guys to keep that in mind. But of course, for College Foundation, we do have an NC Assist loan. It is available to individuals who are North Carolina residents and they're coming to school here, or for maybe individuals who are not residents of North Carolina and they're coming to school here, and could be for people who are North Carolina residents and they're going outside the state. So we want to make sure everybody's covered, but that North Carolina connection has to be in there somewhere. So there's no application fees, origination fees, no prepayment fees. And of course, from year to year, we review our interest rates. And of course, you want to make sure you check our website to find out what the current interest rate is, but we do have it here on the screen for you. And so as Sean mentioned to you, sometimes if you're not someone who has a lot of credit or enough credit, you might have to have a cosigner, or sometimes you might hear the term surety. You may have that person who needs to help you to be able to make the loan. So there is a loan that is for students. That's a student NC Assist loan, and there is also a parent NC Assist loan. So if you need more information about NC Assist, ncassist.org will provide you with some additional details. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about loan servicers. So maybe you already have a loan, or you're thinking about getting a loan, but sometimes we just need to talk about, some vocabulary. Just, what are some of the key terms that we need to know in order to be a borrower? So what is a loan servicer? So as Sean mentioned, when you get loans, it could come from a public or private entity, and that, individual or that group is collecting your money, they're monitoring your money, they're reporting how you're doing on your payments, usually every 30 days. And so, of course, you're going to be contacted by your loan servicer for various things. So of course, once your loan is dispersed to your school, once it's about time to go into repayment, your loan servicer is going to be contacting you because there's information they're going to need to provide to you and maybe information that you need to provide to them. Now, you'll notice throughout the presentation, Sean and I have included some website links. No worries, you will get a copy of the presentation. So you can go back and you can actually visit some of the links that you see here. So again, StudentAid.gov is an amazing website, and we are going to talk about it quite a bit throughout our time together. Now, if you don't know who your loan servicer is, no worries. Of course, we do have information that's provided by the U.S. Department of Education to let you know who owns or who is going to be servicing your loan. So again, that StudentAid.gov website is, just amazing. And so on the screen here, you can see a list of some of the loan services out there. You'll see their contact information. But again, you can go to StudentAid.gov to find out who your servicer is. Now I'm going to turn it back over to my colleague, Sean, and he's going to talk to you about how should you handle refund checks or excess loan funds. I remember when I was in college, so, I know he's got some great, tips and information to give you here.
Thank you, Tequila. Yes, we want to take a moment to talk with you all about refund checks because it's amazing to me how quickly students learn about refund checks when they start school. I can't tell you how many times I have first semester students contact me maybe within the first couple of weeks of school, and they're asking them or inquiring about grants and scholarships because they're focused on getting a refund check. Common purpose for getting a refund check. Refund checks are often the result of students or parents borrowing more than what's needed to cover tuition, room, board, and fee cost. Of that complete sentence, what I want to focus on is borrowing. A lot of times refund checks are the result of loans that have been borrowed in excess of what is needed. This kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier when we said you must enter this game, if you will, with a financial strategy, a strategy of what you're trying to accomplish from a financial standpoint, focused on the fact that you're in school for a reason and that evidently you're borrowing loans because it's needed to assist you with accomplishing that goal. So refund checks are allowed. They're not a negative. I want to point that out because, sometimes, I do cringe sometimes when I hear refund checks, and that just comes from my experience because I'm so familiar with students receiving refunds and not really receiving them for the right reasons, if you will. So we're just going to talk about that briefly, but because we don't want to really beat this to death, but at the same time, we thought it was important to talk about refund checks because we're talking about borrowing loans, and we know that oftentimes refund checks are the result of loans that are being borrowed. Refund check or excess funding, whatever you want to call it. It's money that's left over after your expenses have been paid to the school, because the school is not going to issue you a refund check until they know that their charges or their expenses have been covered. So question, what is your purpose for getting a refund check? Think about that. If you've borrowed loans or if you've received a refund check before, or if for some reason a refund check is on your radar, think about that first and foremost. What is the purpose of getting the refund check? And then how do you plan to use the excess funds that you are going to receive? And again, do you have a financial strategy? I think number two, I just want to take a moment to kind of stand on that one if I can, because I've had students, they're standing in the refund check. This is when actual checks were cut. They weren't direct deposits all that much and so forth, but students were standing in line. They would get their refund check. They go run to the bank wherever they needed to go to cash it. And then they're on the first bus going towards the mall. Think about it. I have my opinions related to whether that's a wise use of the refund check or not, but just think about that. You're borrowing loans that are going to have to be paid back eventually to go to the mall to go on a shopping spree. And this kind of goes back to the wants and the needs. Are you going to the mall or to Target, Walmart, wherever you're going because it's something that you need, or is it because of something you want? But once again, this is all part of having a financial strategy, whether it's related to your school expenses, the loans that you're borrowing for school, or just your personal expense. You may work and have a job. What's your financial strategy? What is your purpose for getting a refund check? Planning ahead for the next semester expenses. I want you to take a moment and think about this. You may get a refund during the fall semester because you have excess funding for the fall semester. But don't just take that money and run. Think about your spring semester. Is your spring semester covered by the financial aid you have in place, or is there going to be a shortfall? Because if there's going to be a shortfall, you need to take that excess funding you got from the fall and set that to the side, or go ahead and make a payment towards your student account to assist with your expenses for the spring semester, because it's not going to make sense for you to get a refund check during the fall. You go blow the money on something that you can't touch later on, and then you find yourself struggling when the spring semester comes around because there's a shortfall. So when you're looking at your financial aid award packages, we like to refer to it, look at it from a holistic standpoint of the fall and the spring semester. Okay, fall's covered. I got this refund. How am I looking for the spring semester? Am I going to be covered for the spring? Do I anticipate some additional expenses associated with me being in school, or is there going to be a shortfall? Because once again, if there's going to be a shortfall for the spring, my mind tells me that that money that you're getting that's left over from the fall semester needs to be applied towards the spring to reduce your stress and your anxiety related to your expenses of being in school for the spring semester. Also, your purpose should be to only use it for school-related expenses. Going back to what we stated, when your financial aid eligibility is determined, is based on your cost of attendance, which is associated or tied to direct expenses and your indirect expenses. And these are all things that are tied and related that may impact or influence you being in school in some way, whether it's directly through tuition or indirectly because of transportation expenses. They're all expenses that the Department of Education has allowed your school to include because it's considered to be a part of what's needed for you to attend school. So keep that in mind. What is the purpose? Is what I have in mind necessary for me to be in school? That's what it really boils down to. Department of Education, they understand, your bare necessities, whether it's, toiletries, clothing, those things are understood. That's a necessity. But is it because you want to go hang out and just go to the mall and flash money and spend it, or whatever the case may be? It's probably not a wise use of the money, and that's not really what it's intended for.
All right. So, thank you, Sean. That was a lot of good information. So, what I want to talk to you about right now is just navigating the loan process stress-free. So, at the very beginning of the presentation, we talked about how do you feel when you hear the term loan or when you hear the term student loan. And, again, as we're talking to you, we want you to borrow responsibly. And I always say that means not borrowing any more than you absolutely have to without sacrificing the quality of your education. So we want you to know how to navigate the process, whether you're someone who already has a loan, you're thinking about maybe taking out loans. There is a way to do it without, getting stressed about it. So a couple points I want to make. Am I required to make loan payments while I'm in school? So some of you might be thinking about that. So basically, as long as you're enrolled at least half time, you're not making payments while you're in school. So of course, if you have that subsidized loan that Sean talked about, the federal government's making, they're taking care of the interest while you're in school and during your grace period. And then if you have the unsub loan, unfortunately, the federal government's not paying the interest that's accumulating. So that means that if you're not making the interest payments, all that interest that's not being paid is going to be added onto your principal loan amount once you go into repayment. So you're not required to make payments, but if you do decide to make payments, it can only help you. So it is something that you can do. And sometimes when I'm talking to students, they'll say, well, Tequila, if I make one payment, do I have to keep making payments every time? So you're not required to make payments, so you don't have to keep making them, but while you're in school, but it is something that can be helpful to you. So, so pay what you can while you're in school. That is a choice that you have. There are no prepayment penalties. So you can make payments anytime. You can pay it off whenever you're ready. So you don't have to wait until the end of your repayment period. So if you're in a position later and you are able to pay it off early, and I use myself as an example, I paid my student loans off about 2 years, early. So that saved me quite a bit of interest over time. So again, as Sean and I are talking, you have to think about what your strategy is, and how you want to do it, stress-free. So, like Sean and I said, while you're enrolled in school, at least 6 credit hours at half time, you're automatically placed in what we call an in-school deferment. And so we'll talk a little bit about what that means in a few slides. But I just wanted to kind of, just put that term out there. I know I have to repay my student loans. What should my next steps be? So that's a great question to ask.
Mhm.
Sometimes we have loans, but we're not sure, what happens now because, how you're handling your loans while you're a student, in the in-school deferment, is different for how you're going to be handling your loans once you go into repayment, right? So what are the next steps for loan repayment? So when you took out your loan, hopefully you were able to complete your interest loan counseling, which helped you to understand your rights and responsibilities as a borrower. So what are the expectations of you, someone being able to receive a loan? So we're going to do the very same thing for you, when it's time for you to enter into repayment. We want to review some things. So you want to complete your exit loan counseling so that you understand again, those rights and responsibilities. Maybe you still remember them, maybe you've forgotten them, but we want to make sure you're ready for that period that you're about to enter. So again, that StudentAid.gov, we told you we're going to talk about that quite a bit. You're going to go to that website, find
Yes.
out who your servicer is. So be proactive. So your servicer is going to contact you no matter what. They're going to get in contact with you. But you don't have to wait for them to get in contact with you. You can make sure you know who your servicer is and be in contact with them. So you need to make sure all your information is current with your servicer. So your phone number, your email, your address, make sure all that information is up to date because things change. Number three, be on the lookout for communication from your servicer. They're going to let you know when you're going to start your repayment period, what your due date is going to be, how much are you going to have to pay. And this is going to help you with budgeting. So you might have a car payment, you might have your cell phone payment, you might have rent to pay. And then of course, your student loan, not to mention entertainment, food,
Mhm.
those needs and wants that Sean referred to. There's going to be some needs and some wants.
Right.
But you're going to need to make sure as you're budgeting, and I'm just going to take a moment if it's okay, Sean. When we talk about budgeting, now, that is a plan or a strategy. That is a strategy that you have, put together. So you have, hey, you have where your money's coming from, and then you know where your money's going, right? Now that plan can change. So sometimes when people hear the term budget, they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's so it's etched in stone." But no, it can be tweaked. It can be changed. So maybe you reduce about how much you're eating out. I love to eat out. Chick-fil-A is my favorite place. Or maybe there's some other things like Amazon. Oh, Amazon is evil. I love Amazon. So you have to watch Amazon, right? Because you can buy a lot of great things. But sometimes maybe Amazon is not in my budget this month. You know, so but your student loan will be in your budget. It needs to be a part of your budget each month, right? Make a decision about the repayment plan you want if you don't want the default plan. So when your servicer gets in contact with you, they're going to offer you that standard repayment. So what they're going to do is look at how much you borrowed. You have 10 years to repay your loans under a standard repayment plan and no prepayment penalty. So they're going to say, okay, Tequila has 10 years to repay X amount of money. We're going to divide whatever her payment is equally so that she pays the same amount for 10 years until her account is paid off. Okay. But if you don't want that default plan, or if it doesn't work for you, and it's okay if it doesn't work for
Right.
you need to contact your loan servicer. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. So as we're talking about making your payments, depending on what type of loan you have, there's lots of types of loans, and Sean and I touched on some. Whether you have the direct loans or whatever, you're going to send your payments to your servicer, and they're going to tell you when, how much it's in, and how if you can do auto pay or how you want to do, if you want to do a draft or whatever. And then, there are some loans that are not owned by the Department of Education. Sean talked about you might have a loan with a bank or credit union or some other type of lending institution. So whoever that entity is, you'll check with the lender to find out about when and how to send payments. And then of course, Perkins loans, if you had those, your school or the billing agency, your school, designates, you send in payments to, but you can check with your school about that. Now, here's another question we get sometimes. Can I get ahead on my loan payments? Absolutely. I want to get ahead on my loan by pay extra each month. You can always do that. There's no servicer that's going to say don't worry about it. You don't have to pay extra. But it's all about what your plan is, what your strategy is. Now, remember, I told you I had 10 years to repay my loan, and I paid my loan off in 8 years instead of 10. So I had a strategy. I had things that I wanted to buy. I wanted to be a homeowner. I wanted to buy a house. I wanted to, buy me another vehicle. There's certain things that I wanted to do. So I said, hey, you know what? I don't want to rent, forever. I want to, get into another living situation where I'm owning that property. So, I started out wanting to get a townhouse, and then I wanted to buy a home that wasn't attached to anybody. I wanted a yard, I had a strategy, and I know you have one too. So again, you can make payments, before they're due, or pay more than the amount that's due each month. Paying a little extra does help, so it does, again, reduce the amount of loan indebtedness that you'll have over time. So, all that interest you could be saving, could help you pay off your loan earlier. So, contact your loan servicer. They can definitely help you and let you know how that's going to benefit you. And remember, there are no prepayment penalties. So these are just some repayment options. And remember, I did tell you that the standard repayment option is the one that your loan servicer is going to put out there for you initially. But if that doesn't work for you, there is a graduated repayment. So instead of, doing the standard plan, you start off making, smaller payments, and over time, those payments get larger. So you can still pay it off in 10 years. There's extended repayment. So you have someone who maybe has $30,000 or more in debt, and they give you up to 25 years to repay your loans. There's some income sensitive or some income contingent repayment plans or income driven plans that you might hear about. But talk to your loan servicer, find out which plan is going to benefit you and help you. So remember, you can always, pay more than the minimum. You can always pay your loan off early. There's a federal loan consolidation that's out there. So this is like extended repayment up to 30 years based upon your loan balance. So maybe you have loans with multiple, entities. So this allows you to, instead of paying, servicer A or servicer B or C, you're just consolidating all into one payment plan. So one monthly payment. So of course, you want to always talk to your loan servicer, because by doing a loan consolidation, you could lose some of the eligibility that you have under your original agreement. So that might be deferment, forgiveness, cancellations, those types of things. So just make sure you're talking to your servicer. Now, I do want to point out that the federal loan consolidation does give you a fixed interest rate. So that's something that's going to be important. There are lots of different types of loan forgiveness, discharge, or cancellation. So some of these you might have heard of: your public service loan forgiveness, teacher loan forgiveness, closed school discharge, discharge due to death, discharge and bankruptcy, bankruptcy, that's in a rare case. So you'll see several different ones that are here. But if you think you qualify for forgiveness, discharge, or cancellation, you can always talk to your servicer. So just want to take a moment just to help you understand loan forgiveness. So, and of course, cancellation and discharge. So of course, all of them mean that you're not going to make, your payments, but they do mean something different, just a little bit. So when we're talking about forgiveness, that means you're not, making, or you're not no longer required to make payments on your loan because maybe a job, so that's a forgiveness or a cancellation. It could be that you're no longer required to make payments on your loan due to certain other circumstance. Maybe you're totally or permanently disabled, or there's a closure of your school where you receive loans. This is what we call a discharge. So all of them mean that you're not making payments, but I just want you to understand the differences with the terms. Public service loan forgiveness, you might qualify. So if you qualify, you might be employed by U.S. federal, state, local, or tribal government, or a nonprofit organization. You work full-time for that agency or organization. They'll have direct loans, or of course, we talked about that. Repay your loans under an income-driven repayment plan. So make 120 qualifying payments to qualify. So, this just tells you a little bit about public service loan forgiveness. I'm giving you a link here to learn a little bit more about it. You can also talk to your loan servicer, or your lender, or your HR department that you might work with. So common loan forgiveness programs would be your teacher loan forgiveness. And so you can see here, it's not everybody have to have loans that were made on or after a certain date. So here, October 1, 1998. And you have to teach in a qualifying low income school for 5 consecutive years. We also have the North Carolina Forgivable Education Loan for Service. So of course, if you're someone who's interested in nursing, allied health, certain medical professions at the doctoral level, this is a great program. So I'm not sure if you learned about it in undergrad. So maybe you're still in undergrad and maybe you have a qualifying major, check it out. If you're thinking about graduate work, if you have a program that's listed that you might be interested in, getting money for, definitely check it out. So basically, if you get money for this program, you're going to have to agree to work in the state of North Carolina 1 year for every year you get it. So it can be forgiven. But there are GPA requirements. You have to make sure you're attending an eligible institution. But cfnc.org/FELS is the website that you want to check out for more information. So again, here you'll see nursing, teaching, allied health, medicine. These are critical needs areas, meaning we need more people working in these areas. So if you're doing this for undergraduate work, if you're going to graduate school and your major is focused in these areas, please, again, check out the forgivable education loan for service. Now, other possible options, there's health career forgiveness. So if you work for a state or hospital system, you might be able to get some kind of forgiveness there. National Guard or AmeriCorps programs, your employer. So here are a few other options for you. So I want to turn it back over to my colleague, Sean. He's going to talk about it is time to pay, but you can't. It's time to pay, but you can't.
Thank you, Tequila. Thank you, Tequila. Yes, it's time to pay, but you can't. If you find yourself in this situation, it's definitely not a time where you just throw your hands up, walk away and say, I'll deal with it later. It's something that you want to face head on as soon as possible. As Tequila talked about, as she was covering a few slides a moment ago, your loan servicer. Developing a relationship or connection with your loan servicer is going to be very key and very important, whether you're having trouble paying or not. But if you find yourself in a situation where you're having trouble paying or it's going to be difficult for you, you want to contact your loan servicer for many reasons. Doing so, you might find that they're able to reduce your monthly payment if you qualify for an alternative repayment schedule. Going back to what Tequila was saying, there's various repayment plans and options, if you will, but you have to work with your servicer to know which plans are available to you and what your options are in regards to your monthly payment amount. So contacting your loan servicer, knowing what those different options are, having that conversation, you might find that the standard plan, the monthly payment is too much for you, but that extended or repayment contingent plan gives you enough room where you can make that payment and stay in good standing with your loan. So you want to do that. You may be able to temporarily postpone your payments if you qualify for a deferment or a forbearance. As Tequila touched on, you may be saying, what's a deferment or a forbearance? It kind of goes back to what she was saying a moment ago with cancellation, discharge, and so forth. Does the same thing, but there's different qualifications that you have to meet to either get a deferment or a forbearance. A deferment, it's a time period when repayment is temporarily suspended. A deferment period may be granted for, and I'm not going to touch on all of these, but if you're at least half time in school at an eligible school, that's that in-school deferment that Tequila touched on earlier. If you're enrolled at least half time with your loans, you generally go into an automatic in-school deferment. If you're doing a graduate fellowship, if you're in the military, or if you find yourself in an economic hardship, employment, once again, you have to be in contact with your servicer. Your servicer won't know what's going on and won't know about the difficulties you're having if you do not contact them and talk about it. And then these deferments apply to loans made on or after. There are time constraints, if you will. The loan must have been made on or after July 1st, 1993. And if you have a loan made before that date, you want to check your promissory note, because oftentimes it's spelled out in your promissory note what options may be available to you in regards to a deferment. But then again, if you don't see it there, or if you do see it there, your loan servicer, you cannot lose by being in contact with your loan servicer. The forbearance, once again, it's a way to postpone your payments, but you're unable to make your scheduled payments, but you do not qualify for deferment. Once again, it's going to accomplish the same thing as being able to postpone your payments, but at the same time, you have to meet other criteria. A forbearance allows you to reduce the amount of your payment or temporarily stop your payments. Most forbearances are discretionary, from lender to lender or servicer to servicer. You need to reveal your individual situation. The servicer will advise you of what steps must be taken, whether there's documentation you must submit or whatever the case may be, and they look at the situations on a case-by-case basis, and they make a determination. A forbearance is more strict, if you will, in regards to the qualifications, more so than a forbearance, as we have, is more discretionary, and it's based on your servicer. They're making a decision based on your individual situation. Delinquency and default. These are two things you do not want, or two areas you do not want to find yourself in. But if you do by chance, don't despair, don't throw your hands up, don't walk away and say, I'll just deal with it another day. We just wanted to touch on this a moment because we're hoping that you don't find yourself in this particular situation. But if you do, all hope is not lost. Delinquency and default, it occurs when you fail to make your payments on time. You are delinquent in meeting your obligation. That's whether it's a student loan, your utility bill, your car payment, any type of debt you may have. If you're not making your payments in accordance to what you've agreed to, you are considered to be delinquent. With an education loan, when you fail to make your payments for 270 days, at least 270 days. And think about that. That's a good amount of time. That's 8 to 9 months where you have not made a payment. Think of how many times you could have contacted your servicer within that time period to advise them of what your situation is, to find out what your options are to avoid being in a delinquent or default situation. 270 days. You can definitely take action within that time frame to prevent finding yourself here. You will be in default on your student loans, like I said, after 270 days, and that's not where you want to be. Because there are serious consequences to defaulting on your student loan obligation, as with any other debt. However, I kind of chuckle a little bit as I say this, because I think I have a flashback of some students I've worked with, where for some reason they just didn't take student loans seriously. And a student loan, not saying that any debt that you're not meeting your obligation is not serious, but with student loans, you can really find yourself in deep water if you do not meet your obligation in regards to your student loans. Talk about default, just to kind of some consequences of going into default. You damage your credit. And anyone who's functioning in today's society, you know that having a good positive credit rating can get you or take you a long ways. Once you go into default, like I say, the 270 days, it's going to be referred to a collection agency. Your servicer they're going to be in contact with you, trying to make contact with you and trying to work with you. But if you're ducking and dodging them and they can't get in contact with you, they will assign your record over to a collection agency. And collection agencies, that's what they specialize in. So one way or the other, they're going to get in contact with you. It can result in garnishment of your wages. You're working hard, earning your money, wanting to get paid, and expecting your pay to be at a certain level, whether you're paid monthly, biweekly, whatever the case may be. But the federal government or your lender or servicer can put a garnishment on your wages, where they're automatically, just kind of like taxes, they're going to get their money before you get yours. And that's not a situation you want to find yourself in. And then once you go into default, for example, those deferment and those forbearance possibilities we talked about, you may potentially lose those. And that's not something you want to occur, because you always want to have that flexibility where you're able to work with your lender or your servicer to make some adjustments in regards to your loan repayment obligation if necessary. Loan rehabilitation is something else we wanted to talk to you about. And I do apologize. We're trying to bring the screen back up so that you can see it, but having a few technical difficulties. So I'm just going to move forward. But loan rehabilitation, if you find yourself in a situation where you've gone into default on your loans, you can work with your lender, your servicer, and to go through what they call loan rehabilitation. And it's basically you're working and you go through a specific plan to get back in good standing with your loans. And it can vary from lender to lender or servicer to servicer in regards to what you must do as part of your loan rehabilitation plan. It may be you being required to make payments, a certain amount of payments, consecutive payments over a specific time frame, but they'll lay out the obligation of what you must do, because it varies once again from person to person based on your individual circumstances of what you must do in order to rehabilitate your loans and get back into good standing with those particular loans. StudentAid.gov, can't emphasize that enough. There's a lot of key tools out there that can assist with this, as well as other things. So please stay abreast of that. Through your account, and you're able to see your loans. You can see what payment plan you've signed up for. You can see how much your payments are. If you're not on the standard plan, for example, you may be on the graduated repayment plan, where your payments start off kind of low and they gradually increase over time. You're able to see what that increase is going to be. So you're kind of able to plan ahead and calculate or factor that into your financial strategy as you're going along. Loan cancellation. Loans can be canceled for various reasons. Some of them always aren't the most positive. However, it's a reality and it's a possibility. So we wanted to mention it and talk about it. Loan cancellation can occur if the student were to die, if the student becomes totally or permanently disabled, if the school closes and the student is unable to complete their program of study as a result of the school closing, if the loan was falsely certified as a result of identity theft, it's potentially your loan could be canceled. Or if your school falsely certified or fraudulently completed a loan application in your name without your approval, These are just some examples of reasons of why a student loan can be canceled. Like I said, they're not necessarily the most positive. However, it's a reality. It has happened. It has occurred. So we wanted to take a moment to mention that to you, because if those type of things do occur, once again, you're going to need to work with your servicer to work through that process in regards to what would need to take place for your loan cancellation to potentially take place. And the same is true when it comes to Parent Plus loans. If a parent has borrowed loans on behalf of a student, there's various reasons in why a parent loan can be canceled. For example, if the parent were to die, parent becomes permanently or disabled, there's various reasons. But once again, that parent would need to be in contact with their loan servicer to let them know what's going on and what options may be available to them in regard and what would need to be done in order to apply, if you will, for a cancellation, whether it's a partial or complete cancellation of loans that have been borrowed. So that's all we're going to say about that. We wanted to take a moment to go over some resources, because it's one thing to know information, but it's another thing to know where to go to get assistance or help for things that you are not familiar with. And that's where we want to make you aware of your resources. And again, I do apologize that the presentation is not before you, but as Tequila mentioned earlier, everyone who's in attendance today is going to get a copy of this presentation, and you'll be able to see these slides that I've covered that you have not been able to see. Wanted to talk about, there's a budget calculator at cfnc.org, cfnc.org. There's a wealth of information, a wealth of tools available at cfnc.org, and there's a great one that's called the budget calculator. It's exactly as it is. It's a budget calculator. You pull it up, the first thing it's going to ask you about is your income. What is your income? Because the income is going to serve as your foundation of your budget. You have to have some source of regular income, steady income coming in order to establish a realistic budget. But we wanted to point that out to you. So please, if you haven't done so, take a moment to go there to the website, cfnc.org, budget calculator. It's that easy. Pull it up. It kind of guides you through the information as far as putting in your income, your expenses and so forth. And it'll help you come up with a realistic budget. You can't have, for example, $3,000 of income coming in every month, and your expenses are $5,000 a month. That'll never balance. So that's what having a strategy, a financial strategy, and working through a budget calculator, a tool such as this can be very helpful in helping you see what's realistic. Because one thing I've seen numerous times in working with students, they're majoring in something, they think they're going to walk out the door making $100,000. And if they use tools that are available to them, they'll see that employment area that they're looking to go into doesn't have a starting salary of $100,000. So if you have in your mind you're going to walk out the door making $100,000, and the area that you're going to be working in, the starting salary is $65,000, you've already started with a shortfall of $35,000. That's going to create a problem for you. You want to create a budget and have a realistic budget that's based on realistic numbers. Also at cfnc.org, there's a smart borrower calculator. This is where you're able to go out there and look at the loans as far as, once again, like I said, you start off by looking at your career, the area that you're interested in working in, your major area, and you're able to put that information in. The system will say, okay, based on what you're majoring in, the area you're looking to work in, this is what a starting salary generally looks like. This is what the salary as far as pay increases over time, which you can potentially anticipate and so forth. Once again, this can help you with saying, okay, if I know I'm going into an area where I'm not going to be making a large amount of money, but you're borrowing large amounts of loans over your education, undergrad, grad, professional, whatever the case may be, and you finish up and your debt is so much larger than what your income is. Once again, you're out of balance, and that's not where you want to find yourself. So go to cfnc.org, use that smart borrower calculator. It can give you an idea if what you're looking to borrow is realistic in comparison to the field of employment that you're planning to go into once you've obtained your degree. Additional resources, once again, StudentAid.gov. We said that numerous times throughout this presentation, StudentAid.gov. Also, CFNC.org, as I just stated, there's a lot of information out there. You can't go wrong if you are tuned into those two resources, especially. StudentAid.gov, ran by the federal government. CFNC.org is a North Carolina-based led effort to make sure that there's a wealth of information out there to assist students. And then also the ncassist.org that Tequila touched on when she talked briefly about the NC Assist loan program. You can go there, ncassist.org, and find out information there. And then also wanted to just let you know that, or give some helpful reminders, I should say. Keep your loan records organized. Keep a record of every loan that you borrow from day one to the end. That way, you always have your paperwork that you can refer to. If something were to come up later on down the road, you can have it as your evidence, if you will, of what you borrowed, what you agreed to, and so forth. So you want to keep a good record of the loans that you've borrowed. And once again, StudentAid.gov, that's there for you. Every federal loan that you borrow is tracked at StudentAid.gov. Now, if you were to do an alternative loan or private education loan, that information may not be recorded at StudentAid.gov, but they generally have a similar source or location where you're able to go and see a full record of loans that you've borrowed. So you want to be able to tap into that information anytime you feel a need to do so, because you need to know where you stand in regards to loans that you've borrowed and what you've obligated yourself to. It boils down to knowing how much loan you've borrowed, what your repayment obligation is, and trying to stay in good standing and just meeting your obligation in regards to what you agreed to do. Your direct loan servicer will offer you the standard repayment plan initially, as Tequila mentioned. Just want to remind you this. Initially, when they contact you and you're going into repayment, prior to going to repayment, they're going to automatically put you in the standard repayment plan. If you're able to do the standard repayment plan, that's great, because that is the least amount of time in regards to your repayment obligation, 10 years. However, that standard repayment plan might not work to your advantage. You may need to look at one of the other repayment plans that allows you to extend your payments out longer, which will give you a lower payment, making it more manageable for where you are at this point in time. And you can always change repayment plans. For if you stayed at the repayment plan with the lower payment, you can make those extra payments that Tequila talked about. There's no prepayment penalty. You're able to pay your loans off as early as possible without any kind of penalty or obligation or any negative effect because of that. And then also, we just wanted to tell you, like I said, you can't see it in front of you, but we want you to stay connected with us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, all the social media avenues. You can stay in tune with us and CFNC.org, the CFNC reps, which Tequila is one of those, and there's several others. You can stay connected with us and just reach out to us and find out additional information as it becomes available and so forth. And that was actually all we wanted to take time to talk with you about today. This is really a... Hello?
Yeah, Sean, I want to say one more thing before
Yeah,
you...
hey.
Yeah, hey, guys, sorry about the interruption. Technology is great, but sometimes it's not great, especially during the inclement weather. So we just had a small little outage in my area. Sean, you did an amazing job. I was able to catch, everything that you said. And what I will say is, because we're not able to see some of the slides, what we'll do, not only will we share the recording, but we will also share a copy of the slides. Hopefully that will be helpful to you guys as well, to be able to see all the information that you missed towards the end. So it was only a few slides. Sean, you did a great job.
Thank you. You as well. Thank you.
So, I know that we're a little bit over time. And again, like I said, we apologize for the interruption, but I do want to make sure we check the chat to see if there are any questions that you guys have or any comments that you might have.
Please send any questions or comments you have. I'm not seeing anything at this time.
No, I'm checking, Sean. I don't see anything on my side. Any questions or comments? We do hope that this webinar was beneficial to you. I know it was jam-packed. We had lots of information, but I think that the webinar was near and dear to both Sean and my heart.
Yes.
And we just want to make sure that, as a student, how that you can navigate the process of having a loan, and that, it is something that you just have to be smart about. You have to think about what your strategy is. But I think we're out of time. I'm gonna check one more time to see if there's any, anything in the chat you want to check too, Sean, to see if you see anything.
Yeah, I'm looking right now. I'm just seeing thank you. No, thank you. We appreciate you all taking the time to be with us this afternoon. I'm just saying thank you. I would like to know if my presentation...
You would like to know if the presentation is being recorded.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yes, the presentation is being recorded. So we'll definitely get you the recording. And like I said, because there are a few slides at the end that you didn't see on your screen, so we'll include a PDF of the presentation so that you can see those. You can see all the slides, and so that'll be a I guess you say a handout to complement everything that we talked about. So
Yes.
guys, you've been amazing. Thank you for being flexible. But, you know, we're out here in the real world, real things happen.
Yes.
So, you know, we do apologize for that glitch, but we thank you so much for being understanding. And we thank you so much for your time and attention today.
Yes. Thank you. Take care.